Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I, 34 female, lost my husband Jake, 38 male, 6 months ago in a car accident. Jake and I were married for 8 years, and we were happy. This was my second marriage. I'd been divorced in my mid-20s and had 2 kids, now 12 and 10, from my first marriage. When Jake and I got together, I was upfront about my reluctance to have more children. I was overwhelmed with 2 kids already, and Jake assured me that he was fine with it. He said he loved me and that my kids were enough for him. Jake's mother, Mary, 63 female, never liked me. From the day Jake introduced me to her, she made her disdain for me abundantly clear. Mary came from a traditional family and had high expectations for her only son. She thought Jake deserved someone younger, prettier, and more willing to give him a fresh start. According to Mary, I was nothing but a divorced woman with baggage. Mary's hostility was overt. She made snide remarks about my parenting, claiming that I wasn't doing enough for my kids or that Jake was taking on responsibilities that weren't his. She often brought up Jake's exes, saying things like, "Oh, remember when you dated Sarah? She was such a sweet girl. She would have made a wonderful wife and mother. You know she's married with 3 kids now." Jake defended me when she crossed the line, but he also tended to downplay her comments. "You know how she is," he'd say. "She'll come around eventually." Except she never did. Over the years, I'd learned to keep my distance, attending family events sparingly, and keeping interactions with Mary to a minimum. When Jake died, my world fell apart. I wasn't just grieving the loss of my husband. I was also trying to keep my kids' lives as stable as possible. Jake had been a great stepfather to them. He took pride in helping them with their school projects, cheering them on at soccer games, and being the stable male role model they needed after my first marriage fell apart. Jake had also been a meticulous planner. He left behind a detailed will, ensuring that I and my kids would be taken care of financially. There was life insurance, savings, and investments that would secure our future. For a brief moment, I thought Jake's careful planning would at least give me the peace of mind to grieve without financial worries. But that peace didn't last long. About a month after Jake's death, I started going through his belongings. Among his things, I found an old phone tucked away in a drawer. I decided to charge it, thinking it might contain photos or memories I'd want to keep. Instead, I found something that shattered my world all over again. The phone contained emails, text messages, and photos documenting a long-term affair Jake had with a woman named Laura, 35 female. They'd been together for at least 5 years. Laura had 2 children of her own, aged 8 and 6. The messages between them painted a vivid picture of their relationship. Jake frequently referred to Laura's kids as his kids. There were photos of him taking them on trips, celebrating their birthdays, and even attending parent-teacher conferences. As if that wasn't enough, the messages revealed that Laura had been pregnant with Jake's child twice, but miscarried both times. The way Jake spoke about Laura in these messages broke my heart. He called her the love of his life and lamented how their situation kept them apart. I felt like my entire marriage had been a lie. I was devastated and furious. In my anger, I told everything to Mary, hoping for some kind of support or understanding or information. Instead, I was met with cold indifference. Mary admitted that she'd known about Laura and the affair all along. She said she'd kept quiet because she didn't want to upset Jake's life. But she didn't stop there. Mary called Laura the love of Jake's life and said Jake only stayed with me because I was convenient and stable, and Jake felt sorry for me. She claimed Jake had confided in her that he was unhappy in our marriage because I refused to have more children. Mary went on to say that Laura was everything I wasn't: warm, maternal, and willing to give Jake the family he supposedly wanted. Hearing this from Mary felt like a dagger to my heart. Mary's audacity didn't stop there. She demanded that I financially support Laura and her children. She argued that Jake's love for them made them like family, and that since Jake left me well off, I should do the right thing by helping them. She said it was my moral obligation to honor Jake's love for Laura and her kids, and because I was holding him from being happy. I was stunned. I flat out refused, telling her that I owed nothing to Laura or her kids, especially when she had an affair with my husband, knowing he's a married man. Mary called me selfish and accused me of dishonoring Jake's memory by turning my back on the people he loved. A few weeks later, Laura herself reached out to me. She was grieving too, and while her tone was less confrontational than Mary's, she hinted at suing me for a portion of Jake's estate. Laura claimed that she and her children had been family to Jake and deserved to be taken care of. She alleged that Jake had promised to include them in his will, but never got around to it. I told her to do whatever she felt was necessary, but made it clear I wouldn't give her a cent voluntarily. The stress of dealing with Mary and Laura was starting to take a toll on me. I was losing sleep, barely eating, and constantly anxious. Then, about 2 months ago, I began feeling physically unwell. I was constantly tired, nauseous, and dizzy. At first, I chalked it up to grief and stress, but the symptoms persisted. Finally, I went to the doctor, thinking I might need something to help me cope with the anxiety. What I didn't expect was to hear the words, "Congratulations, you're pregnant." I was stunned. Jake and I hadn't been actively trying, and I thought the chances of this happening were slim. But there it was. I was 3 months pregnant. The news was a whirlwind of emotions. Despite everything, I was thrilled. My kids were excited to have a sibling, and this baby felt like a blessing in what had been an otherwise devastating time. Not long after finding out about the pregnancy, I was served with court documents from Laura. She was following through on her threat to sue for a portion of Jake's estate. That was the final straw for me. I'd had enough of Mary's meddling and Laura's demands. I called Mary and told her about my pregnancy. I explained that this baby was Jake's child, and that my priority was protecting my kids and my unborn baby. Then I told her flat out, if she wanted any chance of being part of her grandchild's life, she needed to convince Laura to drop the case immediately. Otherwise, she could consider herself cut off for good. Mary's reaction was predictable. She accused me of using my pregnancy as leverage and said I was being toxic and manipulative. She even claimed I was lying about the pregnancy to avoid doing the right thing by Laura and her kids. I hung up on her, blocking her number and any further contact. I've since blocked Mary and Laura from contacting me directly. My lawyer is handling Laura's lawsuit, and I'm confident she doesn't have a legal claim. Jake's will was clear. Everything goes to me and my children. Laura and her kids aren't mentioned anywhere. Still, the stress of this situation is taking a toll on me. I'm trying to focus on my pregnancy and my kids, but still Mary's words haunt me sometimes. She insists I'm denying Laura's kids what Jake would have wanted for them. But why should I sacrifice my peace and my children's future for people who were part of Jake's betrayal? Laura's kids have a mother, and while I sympathize with their loss, they're not my responsibility. My loyalty is to my children, and that includes protecting them from toxic influences like Mary. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to support my late husband's mistress and her kids? Holy moly! Mary and Laura are absolutely out of line. It's bad enough that Jake betrayed OP for years, but for his mother to have the audacity to call OP selfish for not supporting his affair partner and her kids? That's next level absurd. OP owes Laura and her children absolutely nothing. The fact that Mary knew about the affair and still blames OP shows how deeply toxic she is. OP is doing the right thing by cutting them out of her life. OP needs to focus on her children and her pregnancy. OP and her family deserve peace and healing after everything they've been through. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Wow. Just wow. Not the a-hole. Jake's actions are terrible. But what's even worse is how his mother is actively trying to guilt-trip you into financially supporting his mistress. That's some Olympic-level mental gymnastics. It's heartbreaking to find out about the affair, but you don't owe anyone, least of all Laura, a single cent. Let your lawyer handle this lawsuit nonsense and focus on your health and your kids. You're already dealing with so much, and you don't need their toxicity weighing you down. Stay strong. Honestly, Mary sounds like she's living in an alternate reality. You're the selfish one? Excuse me, but wasn't her precious son the one living a double life? And Laura wants to sue you? The entitlement here is mind-boggling. Jake's will is crystal clear. Everything goes to you and your children. Laura and her kids are not your responsibility, no matter what promises Jake might have made to her. Keep standing your ground, and don't let these people manipulate you. You're not the a-hole, and you've already shown more grace and strength than most people could muster in your situation. First of all, I'm so sorry for everything you've been through. Finding out about Jake's betrayal after his death must have been devastating. That said, you are absolutely not the a-hole. Laura knew she was the other woman, and she chose to stay in that situation. That's not on you. And Mary, her behavior is reprehensible. To call you toxic and accuse you of lying about your pregnancy is beyond cruel. She's trying to manipulate you, just like she did during your marriage. Block them all, protect your peace, and let your lawyer handle the drama. You're doing the right thing by focusing on your family. Update. The past few months have been some of the hardest of my life. Laura followed through with her lawsuit, claiming a portion of Jake's estate for herself and her children. What made things even more unbearable was that Mary, my mother-in-law, testified in court on Laura's behalf. She spoke at length about the deep love Jake supposedly had for Laura and her kids, essentially trying to legitimize their affair. It was humiliating, infuriating, and heartbreaking, especially since I was pregnant and constantly worried about the stress affecting my baby. Thankfully, the court ruled in my favor. Jake's will was clear, and Laura's lawsuit was dismissed. After months of turmoil, I delivered a beautiful, healthy baby girl. She's the light of our lives and has brought so much joy to my little family. But, of course, Mary didn't stop. Now she's demanding a paternity test to prove the baby is Jake's. She's even threatening to sue me for grandparents' rights, claiming she has a right to see her grandchild. I've already contacted my lawyer to prepare for whatever nonsense she throws at me next. At this point, I'm focused on protecting my children, my baby, and my peace. Mary and her antics have no place in our lives anymore. I refuse to let her toxicity poison what little happiness we've managed to rebuild. My sister and I met her fiancé's mother together, and that's when everything began. The mother-in-law-to-be made it clear that she preferred me over my sister. She said multiple times that if I was just a bit older, she would have wanted me to marry her son. My sister didn't like her, so when she and her fiancé was busy, I took care of the mother-in-law. Clarification: the mother-in-law was sickly and in need of supervision, and this role was given to me via sister and her fiancé. I wasn't trying to form an anti-sister clique. I really liked talking to older people, so we would have long conversations and we really enjoyed each other's company. My sister felt very unwelcomed by her mother-in-law, so I would visit her way more. Clarification: this was not to spite my sister, but it's because we had a set amount of checkup days to check up on her, and since my sister refused to meet her mother-in-law, I was told to go check up. Thus, I would visit her way more. Since the mother-in-law spent more time with me than my sister, she liked me more. It was a negative cycle. I always tried to make her see my sister in a more positive light, but I never succeeded, and nothing I could do would change her opinion on my sister and on me. She passed in June, bless her, and she gave her wedding ring, not to my sister, but to me. I had no input on her decision-making. I've never asked for it or shown interest in her ring. It was common knowledge that my sister wanted that ring for her wedding ring. I was shocked, just as much as everyone else was. But my sister's fiancé told me to consider it since it was his mother's dying wish. Clarification: her fiancé told me this news, as he was the only one who heard her last wishes. I thought about it, and I decided to keep the ring. When my sister found out, she called me crying and screaming about how much the ring meant to her, and that it was obviously supposed to be her wedding ring. My mother told me that it was the fiancé's mother's ring, which should go to the bride by tradition. My sister told me that ring meant so much to her, and she planned on having it, and that it was selfish of me to steal a ring I wasn't going to use. She told me her wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and that I was a jerk for choosing a dead, non-related woman's wish over a blood-related family's future. That got me, and I started to rethink my decision. Many people around me told me that I was ruining their wedding by preferring a dead stranger to my own flesh and blood. Some of my friends are telling me it was right for me to do, but some are saying that since the original owner is dead, I should stop being so sentimental and give the ring to the rightful owner. My sister is hurt that I chose to accept her dream wedding ring, and I'm so torn. I feel like a piece of crap for accepting it, but I also can't bear to break my promise to her dead mother-in-law. I have it right now, and I know every moment I have it, it hurts my sister immensely. Am I an a-hole for stealing my sister's wedding ring? Your sister didn't even like her future mother-in-law, but is putting her hand out for her wedding ring. Why does it mean so much to her when she didn't even like the woman? So, let me get this straight. Your sister didn't like her future mother-in-law. Her future mother-in-law didn't like her. You and your sister's mother-in-law liked each other and got on well, so when she died, mother-in-law left her wedding ring to you. Sister is now angry she didn't get her dream wedding ring. I'm guessing this wedding ring is not just a plain gold band you can pick up cheap anywhere. Not the a-hole. I'm sorry you lost someone you liked and got on with. Everyone sucks here. Everyone. As soon as your sister's future mother-in-law made it clear that she preferred you and wanted you to marry her son, you should have backed off, not stepped up the friendship. She's partly in the wrong for passing on a wedding ring to the preferred sister, not the one he actually chose to marry. That was a really obvious snub. Your sister is also in the wrong for being angry with you because the mother-in-law left the ring to you, and for caring so much about a piece of jewelry that belonged to someone who clearly didn't like her. And if she should be upset by anyone, it's her fiancé for encouraging you to keep the ring. You have every right to keep the ring, but if it hurts your sister immensely, I'd give it up or throw it into the fires of Mount Doom. Why would you want something so fraught with misery? The woman who left it to you is dead, and neither knows nor cares who's wearing her stuff. Hubs, 31 male, and I, 29 female, are due with baby number 1 and number 2. We are only 13 weeks along, but are looking into buying a new house. Our property is great, but our house is 1, not big enough, and 2, falling apart. This is a big deal to us as we thought it was never going to happen, as we had been trying for 5 years. Anyway, my parents have been looking into downsizing for the past few years, as they say their house is just too big after my sister and I grew up. This is completely understandable, as it's a 5-bedroom home. A few weekends ago, they sat Hubs and I down and asked if we would be interested in their house, as they closed on a new one and are preparing to move. This took us by surprise, and we told them we couldn't afford it. They insisted, saying they didn't want payment for it. We went through financials of the house and decided it would be doable, and we happily agreed, but insisted they let us pay them whatever we sold our property for. Okay, great. Both our problems were solved, and everyone is happy. Everyone except my sister, 26 female that is. Ever since we were kids, she swore up and down that the house would belong to her someday, and begged my parents to give it to her in their will. She's part of the reason they decided to downsize. When she found out, she called me to banshee scream at me about stealing her house from her and started demanding I give her my property because it's not fair that I get 2 while she rents. I told her the property was being sold and the money was going to our parents. She screamed more before I hung up. I texted her that she needs to stop being an entitled bee and that she couldn't afford either property, so she needs to start thinking with her head. Since then, I'm getting non-stop calls and messages calling me a thief and a bee for doing this to my sister, and that I have to give her my property. I'm starting to feel bad because she has always wanted our parents' house, and I'm getting it basically for 1/10 of the cost. Edit. Their house is worth about $90K. We are hoping to get $10K from our property, and are hoping to be able to give them $16K. They aren't planning on giving her an equal gift, as they give her $500 a month, and have bought her several cars throughout the years, and have bought all of her furniture brand new for her. I do not receive the extra money, though they bought me a car at 18, have helped with emergency repairs when we were younger, house and car, and like to buy big-ticket items on birthdays and Christmas. They bought us a new oven 2 Christmases ago. Our parents try hard to not play favorites. I don't accept most of the help unless it's 100% needed, because I don't want to do that to them, and I can support myself. Edit number 2. For those asking, we live in the Midwest in a small country town. Cost of living is pretty low, though we are giving up some amenities such as restaurants, grocery stores, access to jobs. We have a gas station and a dollar store. Not many people want to live here, which keeps prices low. This is a huge gift, and unless they are able to give her something to commensurate value at a similar stage in her life cycle, I can see why she's mad. She, of course, is not entitled to the house, and her reaction is crazy, but this is an example of big favoritism. Since she was so attached to this specific house, why didn't your parents sell it and split the money between you? That way, you have money to upgrade to a better house, and she doesn't get the double slap in the face of you alone being gifted the house of her dreams, while she gets nothing. Has she done something terrible to the family to lead your parents to completely cut her out like this? If not, then everyone sucks here, because you don't seem to care that your parents treat her so much worse than you. Not the a-hole. Your parents are playing favorites, which sort of sucks. But a house costs a lot more beyond the initial monthly payment, and I suspect they know she won't be able to maintain or afford it if she's waiting for them to die before she gets it. I would ask your parents to handle it, as it's their call ultimately. Not the a-hole. So your parents give her $500 a month, $6,000 a year, have bought her numerous cars, and all the furniture that she has. I'm gonna assume each car was at least $10K, times 4 is $40K, another $10K in furnishings, and the $6K each year for what, 3 to 5 years? $40K plus $10K plus $18K equals $68K, which is way over half of the value of the house you were getting. So she has and still is getting a portion of her inheritance every single month. As you said in one of your posts, you plan on giving $16K to your parents, and that they can do anything they want with that money, including give it to your sister. My parents are both living, healthy, and relatively young, both in their 40s. But they recently redrafted their will due to everything going on. My sister is 25 living at home, and I'm 20 living in an apartment. So honestly, I feel this point is moot. However, my sister is extremely upset with me. Since my parents redrafted their wills, my mother decided to sit down with my sister and me separately to discuss things. My sister wanted everything to be split down the middle, but did not want to liquidate the property. She was wanting my mother to allow us to buy each other out, so whoever had the funds would be able to have our family farm. My mother did not agree with this prospect due to the inability for us to have the assets to purchase such a property, especially at this age. She sat down with me separately, and I told her I'd rather have my sister be given all the liquid assets if I was able to keep the farm. My mother agreed with this since it was fair, and allowed for the land to stay in the family. When talking to both of my parents, they wanted to give me most of the sentimental items, while my sister got first pick of particular family heirlooms. While we both are getting items and they are relatively similar value-wise, financially split down the middle more or less. Most of mine have family ties to them as well. My parents know my sister is less responsible with money, has difficulty keeping a job, and does not treat her or others' property well due to some of her medical history. This belief supported their reasoning. Well, my parents told my sister the new arrangement, so it will not come as a surprise, and she is utterly furious that I coerced my parents into giving me the land and more family heirlooms. When she read the will, the anger doubled. Because it was listed in the event they passed, she would have 6 months to move out of the family home. Now she's claiming I not only stole her inheritance, but am rendering her essentially homeless in the instance our parents die. My sister and I have always been civil, but she's been coming after me, calling me all sorts of names and telling people that I have stolen her rightful inheritance. Am I the a-hole for negotiating inheritance with my parents? I honestly feel somewhat guilty for pushing her to this point, especially during Christmas time when we're supposed to spend time together. Edit. Some people have been asking if the assets are similar in value, which financially they are. I have lots of sentimental value for the farm, hence why I'd rather have the property than money. Edit 2. Someone asked about the disabilities, so I'll copy that response here. My sister has bipolar depression and memory loss due to adolescent epilepsy. I also have PTSD, ADHD, cerebral palsy, and other neurological conditions that are progressing. Therefore, I do not take the difficulties we have into high account in this particular situation, since our disabilities do not directly correlate with the situation. My parents have already set up a system for their passing that would provide her long-term insurance, and have a plan in place. The money she would be receiving would be approximately $5,000, in addition to her monthly SSI my mother has worked to get her. That would also be after the initial sum of money unbeknownst to me and life insurance. This money would be dispersed for more or less the rest of her life in the event they died. In addition, my sister has been able to live on her own but has since came back home due to being unable to manage money well and the inability to stay in a job. My disability makes me unable to live independently, but my boyfriend is able to assist me in that regard while I work towards raising money for a service dog. Curse insurance. I didn't really find this relevant, but I guess it's important. Not the a-hole. Your parents are the ones who drafted the will. This is what your parents wanted. I'd say not the a-hole even if they cut her out fully, but they didn't. It's still roughly equal. Sounds to me like she wants to split money down the middle without selling the house so that she can continue living there indefinitely until you buy her out, so that she can have her cake and eat it too. The way your mom decided to split things sounds fair, since what you and her would be receiving are of relatively equal financial value. Not the a-hole. And I feel bad for your parents that she's already engaging in this macabre fight over an inheritance before they're even dead. Not the a-hole. Your sister sounds entitled and like she doesn't quite understand the responsibility of property ownership. She would also likely never agree to the appraisal pricing of the property in order to buy you out, which would then likely make her contest the will, and then let it bleed out in court for years. This was the right choice in the end, for all involved. My 16 female. Parents are divorced. They got together in 2004, married in 2006, a couple months before I was born, and split up in late 2012. The divorce was finalized in early 2013. My parents' split really affected me. I got homesick, upset, and anxious when I was away from one parent, and it was the same when I was with the other. I cried all the time, was very withdrawn and sensitive, and thought I was the reason they split. It got tense for a while when my parents got new partners, but I eventually got used to it. If it's relevant, my dad married my stepmom in 2016 and has 2 kids with her. My mom has been dating my stepdad since 2016. I never knew why they divorced. I was around 6 when everything happened, and they could only explain it to me in a child-friendly way. Sometimes mommy and daddies grow apart. They still love each other. Everything happens for a reason. And I did question them as to why it was happening, but never got the truth until a week ago. It came out that my dad had been unfaithful to my mom. Him and this girl, who apparently was around 18-19, were together for 10 months before my mom found out via photos that the girl's mom posted on Facebook of them together. Expected drama ensued, and during the divorce process, my dad got engaged to the girl. He tried to introduce her to me. He told me that she was my new mommy, but I was cold towards her. I had to see her more after that and just never warmed up to her. They broke it off in 2014 for some reason, and that was that. I couldn't help but snap at him after finding out. I blew up at him. I yelled and told him that he had broken up our family for a girl he barely knew. He completely destroyed my mom and her trust, that he had the audacity to introduce us and tell me that she was my new mom, that he saw how much it affected me, that his 6-year-old wouldn't eat or talk because it had given me crippling anxiety, and I blamed myself, that he was too much of a coward to ever tell me about it. He argued back that it was none of my business, and my uncle, who let this whole thing slip, defended me and said he thought I knew, which is why he said it, and I had every right to be upset. I ended up storming out and stayed the night at a friend's. I gave him the story and he said that he understood I was upset, but it wasn't my place to yell at him. I'm confused with everything I feel too. I was young when they split. I wouldn't have expected them to tell me at that age. But when I was older, part of me doesn't feel like it's my place to be upset. Another part of me thinks I have every right to be upset at both him and my mom, since she never told me anything either. All in all, am I the a-hole for yelling at my dad after finding out why my parents divorced? Not the a-hole at all. Let me start by saying I hurt my own family by being unfaithful. Those choices I made may eventually come out later to my son, and if he's mad at me, I'll have to own my mistakes once again to a new person capable of understanding. It sounds to me like your dad feels crappy and doesn't want to relive the shame again. Still, you have a right to your feelings. Dad needs to own his crap, now and forevermore. We all need to. Not the a-hole. Of course it was your business and your place to yell at him. He betrayed you and your mother in a horrible, shameful way. Your friend is way clueless for what he said to you. Not the a-hole. His decision affected you all. You've been blaming yourself for the past 10 years, internalizing things, developing anxiety, along with a host of other things that come with divorced parents, bouncing between households. Holidays are stressful because the family is divided, so you have to spend it half with this one and half with that one. The new partners coming in and out of their life. The truth was bound to come out eventually, and I'm sure he imagined one day you might find out and how to address it with you. He just never prepared. Hopefully you can both discuss this when things calm down and move forward when you're ready.